Hello, hello. Today's lesson is about ray diagrams for lenses. Now, what is a lens, you might ask? Well, it's basically just a piece of transparent material, either glass or plastic, whatever, that has been shaped in a way that allows light to refract through it and form an image. There are a number of different lenses, but we're going to be focusing on a simple converging lens and a diverging lens. And so a converging lens can also be thought of as a biconvex lens because we have these two sort of convex shapes right here. And the diverging lens we will focus on could also be considered a biconcave lens because we have these two concave shapes here. Now just know that you can get many lenses that are concave on one side, convex on the other, flat on one side. There are lots of different variations of lenses, but again, we're going to focus on these two right here. Now, if you recall, to converge means to sort of meet up at a certain point. And when we're talking about mirrors or lenses, these rays, these parallel rays, will all converge or meet up at the focal point. Diverging lenses, on the other hand, when they are refracted out of the lens, they will diverge, so they're going to spread apart. So a converging lens will have rays that converge, and a diverging lens will have rays that spread apart. A diverging lens will always form a virtual image. A converging lens can form a real image, but can also form a virtual image or no image. So just like with mirrors, we also have some sort of terminology that we need to be accustomed with. So our principal axis is here, same as always, and we have our focal length, but there are actually two foci or two focal lengths. So we have one over here and one over here. The other difference is that instead of the center of our circle, we have something called 2f, or twice the focal length, and that again exists on both sides. Sometimes you'll see the left side differentiated from the right side by adding an apostrophe to one of the sides, either the left or the right. The other important thing to know is that we have a vertical axis, so that's right here. Now this vertical axis is important for simplicity's sake. In our last lesson we talked about refraction, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom up on that. And when light moves towards an object, as soon as it changes media, it will refract. And I don't know if this is the right direction for the refraction, but that's not really the point. So it's going to refract, and then it will refract again as it leaves the media. So as you can see, there's this sort of double bend going on here. But when we are drawing ray diagrams, we simplify this so that instead of trying to draw that double bend, what we will see is the ray will hit the vertical axis and then it will bend. So we just have one bend point instead of the two that I just showed you. So the rules for drawing the ray diagrams are very much the same as for mirrors. Any ray that is parallel will come out to the other side and move through the focal point. Now, because the lens is a transparent object, the ray will travel through the lens for our ray diagrams. And this is a very important thing, though I do see many students making a mistake where they actually end up drawing a reflection instead of a refraction. One thing to just point out here is this image shows that we have that double bend. Again, for simplicity's sake, we are just going to bring that line straight to that vertical axis and then straight down through the focal point. So our parallel ray will come in and it will refract and go through the focal point on the opposite side. Our next rule is focal to parallel. So just like our rules for our mirrors, we have parallel to focal, focal to parallel. And as you can see here, any ray that goes through the focal point will come out the other side running parallel to that principal axis that is not actually shown right here. The final rule is our V to V. So where light travels into the vertex will go straight through it in this case. So in a mirror, we saw a reflection, but with our lens, it's going to go straight through. It's that sweet spot where light is hitting that lens at that sort of perfect angle where it goes straight through. So, step 1, draw our 3 incident rays. As you can see here, we have one parallel incident ray, we have one focal incident ray, and we have one vertex incident ray. Now, our rules are parallel to focal, focal to parallel, and V to V. So parallel to focal, and so if if we're moving from this parallel line, then it's going to refract and go through the focal point. So I'm just going to draw that line there. Again, ideally you are using a ruler. Then if you take a look at our first focal line, so that's this one here that's running through that focal point, it's going to bounce off, well, sorry, refract. It's not bouncing off, that would be reflection. And that line should be parallel, so our parallel line should be parallel to our principal axis, which is that line running straight through the middle. Then we have V to V. So remember, our V goes straight through. That was not a very well drawn line. And there we have it. So our intersection of the line is right there, and my object is right here, which I will just draw in black. Now, if I'm going to describe the characteristics of the image, and this is our image over here, then I'm going to say that the size is smaller, just a little. The attitude is inverted. The location is between F and F2, and I'm actually, 2F, and I'm actually going to use a little apostrophe to designate that those are on the right-hand side. And last we have the type. Now, type here is different from mirrors. And I think of it as if you are looking through a lens, you are seeing the real world on the opposite side. So with lenses, we have real over here and virtual over here. And now, of course, I'm not saying left and right, because if we sort of flipped this to the other side, then the real side would still be on the opposite side of the object. So however you want to think of it, in this case, our image is real, because this means that we can project it on a screen. If I put a piece of paper right here, you would see an upside down, arrow right on that piece of paper. So here is that image again, and just like mirrors, you can sort of use the same rules for the object being placed anywhere before F. Once we have an object on F or in front of F, the situation changes again, just like it did with our mirrors. It is worthwhile to note that depending on where you put the image, so here it's on 2F, the image will also change. So here the image is on 2F now, and it's the same size. If you instead put the object between 2f and f, then the image is beyond 2f apostrophe, and it is larger. So it uses the same rules every time, and you certainly don't have to memorize this information, because if you just draw out the ray diagram, then you should end up with an image that leads you to this information. Okay, here is scenario 1 that is a little bit funny. So in this scenario, if you recall our rules, we have P, F, so P to F, F to P, and V to V. So here we have parallel to focal, and we have V to V. Now, just like with our mirrors, when the object was on the focal point, you are not able to draw that focal point incident ray because you cannot simultaneously go through the focal point and also go through the lens. You can double check that there is no image by drawing the extension of these rays, and notice they're still parallel, so there will never be an intersection of the refracted rays, meaning there is no image. Okay, here is where things get complicated. This is when we have an object that is between f and the lens. So the same rules exist, but they look a little different. And let's work through this diagram on the right over here. So I'm going to zoom in and just get rid of my thing over here. So same as always, our rules are parallel, focal, focal, parallel, and good old V to V. So you will see here that our object is right here, placed between F and the lens. And so I'm going to start with V to V because that is always the easiest one. And V to V is going to go straight through. Then I'm going to draw my parallel line because that's the next easiest one. And so here's my parallel line, and I'm going to that vertical axis and then refracting out through focal. In this case, we can call it focal apostrophe. Now, here's the challenging bit. When we are working through the focal point, we are actually going up. And if you recall from my last lesson, I said that you could sort of just pretend that the lens kept going and extends continuously. And so that's why we are able to do this. And that focal incident ray is actually aligned with the focal point on the side of the object. And so this has a lot of similarities to our last lesson with the mirrors. And the easier part from here is just drawing the parallel line. Now you may notice that our refracted rays, so these are refracted rays, remember, not reflected, these do not intersect. They never meet. Same as with mirrors, when the refracted rays do not meet, you have to draw the extension of the refracted rays. So here's our extension, and please remember to extend the refracted rays, not the incident rays. So the ones drawn in red, including our V to V, not our blue, which are our incident rays. And we have found our point of intersection, and our image is drawn right here. So if we were to discuss the characteristics, we would say it's larger, it's upright, it's in front of 2F, and it's a virtual image. So that's it for converging lenses. There are 3 scenarios. The first, where we put our object anywhere in front of F, so it could go anywhere here. The second, where we put our object straight on the focal point, and the third, where our object is in front of the focal point. Now we're going to go on to discuss ray diagrams for diverging lenses. Thankfully, there is only one thing it does, just like the convex mirrors. So this is where using those apostrophes with our F and 2 times F are particularly useful. Our rules have not really changed, but they might feel like they do. So in this slide, we have our parallel line, and what you may notice is that our focal is actually going not towards the focal point on this slide, but the focal point that is on the same side as the object. And so what's happening is if we extend that refracted ray back, it would go through the focal point. If we look at our sort of usual next rule, it would be focal to parallel. Now, it gets a bit tricky because it's not the focal on the same side as the object, it's the focal on the opposite side of the object. And so I would usually call it F apostrophe to parallel. And you should clearly be able to see that in this diagram. And so here are our so-called focal rays coming in. You'll notice they are actually opposite from our color scheme up here, which is too bad. But these focal rays are in the same sort of alignment with the focal point on the opposite side, which I would call F apostrophe. So they are going towards the opposite side, and then once they hit that vertical axis, then they refract out parallel to our principal axis. So if you check out a completed diagram, what we have here is our, let's zoom in maybe, we have our parallel to focal. Notice it's this focal. We have our, this is actually our V to V. We could draw in our focal, and so I'm drawing that line, and it should be aligned with that, and then it bounces out parallel. And what you'll notice is that none of these refracted rays intersect, hence why we call it diverging. They're diverging. We can find our image by extending those refracted rays, and they roughly intersect right here, and you can see our image drawn right there. Our image for a diverging mirror will always have certain characteristics. I think I may have said diverging mirror. I meant diverging lens. But anyhow, so the image characteristics of a diverging lens will always look like this because the image is always going to be between F and the lens. Notice no matter where we put the object, we get the same-ish results for our image. It changes a bit, but overall the characteristics are the same. So that's it for our lesson on ray diagrams for lenses. Just like with mirrors, there are basically 4 different scenarios that you will have to be able to write out. I strongly encourage you to practice this. The more you do it, the more comfortable you will get. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck!